Please forgive someone like me. Goodbye.
The day after giving birth, what was next to my pillow was a suicide note from my husband. The shock was too much for me postpartum, and my mind went blank. Later, my husband's shoes were found at the edge of the cliff. After that, I was just barely getting by, living with my daughter, Alice, and before I knew it, 5 years had passed. I found solace in the growing, radiant smile of Alice. However, when I attended my friend's wedding, something shocking happened. Surprisingly, standing next to the bride was my husband. Dressed in a tuxedo, he had the same smile as before, standing there, supposedly having thrown himself into the sea. Why was he here? From there, I came to learn an unexpected truth, and as a result, his life took a downward turn. 5 years ago, at 35, I was working as a nail technician with regular clients. Dreaming of owning my own shop someday, I was working hard while saving up. Concerned about me being so focused on work and without a boyfriend, my best friend Sarah invited me to a mixer.
Emily, it's great that you're dedicated to your work, but you haven't given up on marriage or having kids, right? If so, you've got to seek out some encounters.
Encouraged by words from Sarah, a friend from high school who I've had a complicated relationship with, I decided to join, thinking it might be good for a change. And so, my life took a significant turn. At the mixer, I had an unexpectedly good encounter. We hit it off as if we'd known each other forever, and soon started dating. His name was Michael Thompson, a 38-year-old businessman. Both of us being in our late 30s, we were dating with the intention of getting married. But within 6 months, it found out I was pregnant. Michael, I think I'm pregnant.
What? Really?
The moment I told him, I thought I saw a startled look on his face, but he quickly smiled and hugged me. We decided to have the wedding after the baby was born and things settled down, and before that, we talked about getting legally married and starting to live together. However, during the move, my morning sickness worsened, and there were days I couldn't get out of bed.
We should get married sooner, so just sign the marriage application, and I'll submit it to the clerk's office.
I wanted to go together. Sorry.
Don't worry, just dress for the baby.
I was always enveloped in his kindness. Yet, there was one concern. It was about my parents. Living in the countryside and concerned about social appearances due to their jobs, they had been pressing me about marriage whenever they saw me. I can't stand that, and I had stopped contacting them for a while. But when we announced the shotgun wedding, I'm expecting some disapproving looks from them again. As expected, when I contacted them, my father yelled, "It's shameful, don't come back home." Though I anticipated it, such a situation still brought me down, compounded by morning sickness, making every day gloomy. I gradually started missing work, spending most of my days in bed, unable to handle household chores, and settling for the bare minimum when it came to meals. I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything today either.
Test again.
As days went by, Michael, who was supposed to be kind, began to change. Even though I was in the midst of a blissful newlywed life, and we were about to welcome a baby soon, things hadn't turned out the way I envisioned, and all I feel was a sense of urgency. At this rate, I might not become a good wife or a good mother. Every day, struggling with nausea in bed and shedding tears was truly hellish. Yet, more troubles began. Michael started coming home late, and his time at home decreased. Moreover, on the rent due date, there was no payment from Michael. We had agreed to split the rent in half when we started living together, and the rent was set up for automatic payment from my account, which I signed the lease for the apartment, but there had not been a single transfer from him. Hey, did you forget to transfer money for the rent? What's happening with it?
Just wait a bit longer. There's been a lot of drinking and entertainment this month. I'm in a bit of a financial pinch.
Every time I checked, he'd say that and put off the payment. And in the end, it was almost like I was the one paying the rent. Moreover, as payday approached, he'd increasingly ask me for loans. But I'm not able to work right now, and considering the future, I'd like to set aside our savings. Due to the morning sickness, I was practically on leave, and had reluctantly started dipping into my savings to open a nail salon. But I really wanted to keep that saved up.
The thing is, I had an unexpected business dinner at a fancy restaurant, and I'm in a pinch this month.
But shouldn't that be covered by the company's expenses?
It doesn't work that way. Plus, landing this contract now could significantly affect my promotion. Please.
He said that if he gets promoted and earns more, it would be easier to support the family, so I had no choice but to agree. But then I noticed an unfamiliar watch on Michael's wrist. Hey, where did you get that watch?
Notice? Cool, isn't it? I've been eyeing this watch for a while.
He showed it off to me, almost like a child bragging about a treasure. That's not the point. How much did that cost?
What's it to you? I bought it with my own money. Stop nagging.
Despite me paying the full rent and even lending him money, what was he thinking? I couldn't help but snap at him. Before spending money on such things, you should have discussed it with me. You're about to become a father. When I, usually quiet, unexpectedly raised my voice, he looked surprised and then awkwardly apologized.
Sorry, I'll be better from now on, okay?
Seeing him apologize sincerely made me wonder if everything would be all right once the baby arrived, but I had a vague sense of unease. After that, the days my husband returned home became even fewer. And as the pregnancy entered the late stages, an unexpected situation arose during a prenatal checkup.
What? Hospitalization? From now?
At the checkup, they said it's a threatened preterm labor. There were still about 2 months to the due date, but the doctor advised me to be hospitalized to keep the baby in as long as possible. I was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, but determined to do my best to protect my baby, so I have mentally prepared myself for a long-term hospitalization. And there I was, on the bed, looking forward to the birth of my unborn baby. But admittedly, the days of doing nothing but rest were boring. During this time, my salvation was my best friend Sarah visiting me often. She was currently working at a detective agency specializing in infidelity investigations, and would make me laugh by sharing funny and interesting stories from her work, within the limits of what she could tell.
So, cheating always gets discovered, huh?
That's right. When I fell silent, Sarah looked at me intently.
Don't tell me Michael is cheating.
It's not like that, but I ended up spilling all the incidents that had been bothering me.
Leaving home that often, Michael's actions are suspicious.
Seeing Sarah mutter with a serious expression, I thought, I knew it. Deep down, I had been suspecting it, but chose to look away.
Just to make it sure, did you confirm if your marriage application was actually submitted?
What? I haven't checked it, but no way that could be. Sarah's unexpected words shocked me. I had never harbored such doubts.
Some men do that. I'm not sure about Michael, but it's better to check it.
Torn between feeling wrong to doubt my husband and wanting to clear my uneasy thoughts, I was indecisive. Then, Sarah suddenly stood up.
An administrative proxy can check it, so I'll go to the clerk's office right now to find out for you. It's better to clarify these matters.
She had me write the necessary documents for a proxy application and quickly left the room with her bag. It's okay, the marriage application must have been submitted. Just confirming that will ease my mind. Waiting as if to reassure myself, Sarah returned within an hour.
Here.
What she handed me was my family register, and there was no record of me being married to Michael. This can't be.
Then, why not ask him directly?
And so, I decided to ask him when he visited the maternity wardroom the next day. When he arrived, he was smiling as usual. Despite my conflicting emotions, I knew I had to clear things up for the sake of our child. Hey, did you actually submit the marriage application?
What?
His face changed color instantly, and he fell silent, seemingly deep in thought. After a while, he began to speak.
To tell you the truth, I wanted to submit it together with you, so I decided not to go through with it.
He went to the clerk's office, but he changed his mind, thinking my condition would surely improve soon. Then you should have just told me that at the time.
I know, but after that, a lot of things happened.
He got wrapped up in some financial troubles, which also led to him being unable to make rent payments.
Feeling inadequate about becoming a father. So, I wanted to wait until this matter was settled before having a proper conversation with you.
I couldn't say anything to him as he spoke with a downcast face.
I'm sorry for making you anxious, especially with our child on the way.
At that moment, he began to cry, and I could only pat his back. I had no idea he was going through such a hard time in silence. As his wife, I need to support him. After that, my husband rarely came to visit and stopped responding to my messages. I thought maybe he was too embarrassed and needed some space, so I decided not to press the issue and just wait. Despite everything, my belly continued to grow, and the day of delivery has finally arrived. I've started having contractions in the midnight, and by morning, our daughter was born. A healthy baby weighing over 6 pounds and 9 ounces. I managed to contact Michael, and he came, but he seemed distant and wouldn't make eye contact with me. It surely bothered me, however, after enduring a challenging night and facing the proof of overcoming intense pain, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness that made everything else fade away. Holding my small, helpless child, I was overwhelmed with emotion and tears of joy. I'm so glad you were born safely. Michael held Alice with a complicated look on his face. The day after giving birth, what was next to my pillow was a suicide note from my husband.
To Emily, you might be surprised by the sudden letter, but these are my true feelings.
The letter was filled with his agonized cries. At that time, he hadn't clearly explained, but it turned out he had fallen victim to a scam, lost all our savings, and was being chased by debt collectors. Thinking of our upcoming child and family, he saw no other way out.
If I continue to live, I'd just be a burden. That's why I intend to jump off a famous cliff known for suicides. Please forgive me. Goodbye.
His last words were shocking, leaving me unstable after giving birth, in a daze. Rushing to the police, Michael's shoes were found at a famous cliff, presumed to have jumped into the sea, leaving me in tears. Despite a search, his body was never found. His whereabouts remained unknown, and I filed a missing person report, holding onto a sliver of hope that he would return someday. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed. During this time, all I could do was struggle through life, holding Alice. Fortunately, when I informed my parents of the birth of my daughter, they came to visit, and we reconciled. Thanks to my parents doting on my firstborn daughter Alice, I managed to get by even as a single mother. Now I'm balancing childcare and work, fighting to achieve my dream of opening my own shop. Sarah has been a great support, frequently visiting and taking me and Alice out for shopping and fun. Then an invitation from a high school buddy, Olivia Johnson, reached to me. In high school, Olivia, Sarah, and I were always together. Olivia, a CEO's daughter, had moved to Japan after high school due to her parents' business, and we had lost touch since then. She had returned to the United States before we knew it, and we were really surprised when we received an invitation to her wedding reception.
Olivia's getting married. I wonder who the lucky guy is.
Sarah called me excitedly, but I had no idea either. Maybe she met someone in Japan, or perhaps he's some corporate heir. We were both looking forward to reuniting with our friend after so long. On the day of the wedding, the venue's luxury and decoration were a testament to Olivia being a CEO's daughter. I remember Michael used to work for a company under the Johnson Group. I quietly murmured such a thing in my mind. As the lights dimmed and music played, the spotlight fell on the doors, which slowly opened. Seeing Olivia after a long time, she hasn't changed much, and her smile brightened up the surroundings like the cheerful spring sunshine making flowers bloom, reminding me of the old times. However, the moment I saw the groom standing next to her, my heart froze. What, Michael? Surprisingly, standing next to Olivia was my husband, who was supposed to have disappeared by jumping into the sea the day after Alice was born. Why is he here? And why with Olivia? I never imagined reuniting under these circumstances. Seeing him standing there in a tuxedo, smiling just like before, I was thrown into confusion. Why on earth? As I stood there, feeling like I was seeing a ghost, Sarah next to me spoke up.
Isn't that Michael?
I was thinking the same thing. That smile is just like Michael's, the slight lift of the left corner of his lip, I'm sure it's him. If even Sarah, who works at a detective agency, says so, then I was convinced at that moment it had to be my husband.
What's going on here? He was supposed to have jumped into the sea.
Yay, it's unbelievable. If that suicide note was a lie, then not entirely out of the realm of possibility. I'm filled with the desire to catch him immediately and uncover the truth, the man who disappeared, leaving behind me and our newborn daughter. Yet I decided to hold back for now, not wanting to ruin my friend's wedding. I whispered to Sarah, who seemed eager to get to the bottom of this. I have a favor to ask.
What is it? Anything?
I want to know what Michael has been doing during these missing 5 years. Can you help me? She grinned and gave me a thumbs up.
Of course, I would have investigated even if you hadn't asked me.
I'm counting on you. The very next day, we began looking into Michael. Sarah even took time off work to start tailing Michael. As we dug deeper, we stumbled upon a shocking truth. I can't believe Michael was such a person. I was hit with a wave of shock so intense, I almost crumbled.
I know it's shocking, but now that you know everything, you're not going to let this slide, are you?
Of course not. There's no way I'd let this slide. With that, we decided to take action against Michael. A few days later, we attended a party meant to introduce Michael, Olivia's husband, to everyone. We had gotten the invitations through a certain way. As I was looking for Michael somewhere in the spacious venue, I found it too in the center of a circle of people.
Emily, there he is. What do we do? He's surrounded by so many people.
Well, then we have no choice but to confront him head on.
Wait, head on, Emily, wait a sec.
Not even hearing her restraint, I took one step closer to him, clacking my heels as I went. As I came into Michael's view, his surprised expression froze. As I approached with a smile on my face, Olivia noticed me and said, "Emily, thank you for coming today." "You're welcome, Michael, long time no see." As I smiled at him, his face, which had been smiling until then, suddenly contorted. "Michael, why are you here? Weren't you supposed to have jumped off a cliff?" My loudly feigned surprise drew the attention of everyone around us. Olivia also pressed, "What's going on? Michael, you know Emily."
Well, that is.
The sudden turn of events caused a stir, and Michael started to panic visibly. "Olivia, you might not believe this, but listen. This man, Michael, was supposed to be my husband up until 5 years ago." As Olivia grasped Michael's chest and shook him violently, asking, "What does that mean, Michael?" He just looked bewildered, with his eyes rolled. There I laid out the events of 5 years ago for everyone to hear, not hiding a thing. How he disappeared the day after I gave birth to our child, leaving behind a suicide note before jumping off a cliff. Ever since, I've been living my life to the fullest. The murmur in the room quieted down, and I could tell everyone was listening to me. But if Michael is alive and well, that means the suicide note was just for show, right? I stood in front of him and pointed. "You left us because you wanted to marry Olivia." Michael, avoiding my gaze, turned pale. Whispers of why would he go that far started circulating among the crowd. Olivia glared at him. So you were dating both of us at the same time, got scared of the responsibility when I got pregnant, and ran away. You were actually planning to marry Olivia for her money.
That's...
Michael, pale as a ghost, desperately looked for a way out, but when Olivia's father showed up, he just sat down, cradling his head. I went on to expose his secrets. Plus, it seems like you have debts from gambling since you were with me, amounting to over $50,000, right? Olivia confronted him. I never heard such a thing. And Michael started panicking.
I was going to tell you. I swear. I had a plan to pay it all back. I was planning to tell you after I paid it all back.
Was that plan to marry Olivia and become a CEO? Michael fell silent at my accusation, glaring at me sharply. 5 years ago, it seems like you got drunk and were bragging to people at the bar. You were boasting about playing both sides, maybe even becoming a CEO if things worked out, and you didn't even plan to marry me. Sarah, the detective, had gathered these testimonies that I couldn't have found on my own. I thrust the investigation report right under his nose. Then he brazenly snatched the report from me and started tearing it up, as if he didn't care.
You don't think you can get away with this scot-free. It was a mistake to get involved with you. If only you hadn't gotten pregnant.
His plan foiled. He looked like he was about to jump on me any second with an angry demeanor. Truly the lowest. I'll be contacting a lawyer for a divorce and child support, so be prepared. You can come out wherever you want when you try to run this time.
This wasn't supposed to happen. Everything was going so well.
As he hit the floor with his fist in frustration, Olivia slowly approached him and declared, "That's my line. I can't trust you anymore. What Emily was saying is true."
No, wait. This is all her fabrication.
Michael pleaded with Olivia, but her decision was firm. After all, Sarah and I had met with Olivia beforehand and told her the truth. That's why she had sent us the invitation for today. When Olivia shook off Michael's hand, she stood beside Sarah and me, giving Michael a cold stare.
Come on, Olivia, think it over.
Later, Michael was sobbing, apologizing to her, but after being scolded by her father, he finally calmed down. Furthermore, Michael, who worked at Olivia's company, got the boot straight from the CEO himself and lost everything.
It's because of you, Emily, that I couldn't become the CEO.
Huh, this is all on you. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm also a CEO's daughter.
What? You are?
He looked utterly baffled by this sudden revelation. The truth was, my father also ran a company and planned to pass it on to me or my future husband. That's why my parents kept pushing me to get married for one reason or another, always going on about how it would look bad to others. I got estranged from my parents because I got pregnant too soon and never found the right moment to tell you. But well, it turned out for the best.
So, if I had married you, I could have become a CEO.
Suddenly, Michael grabbed my hand and kneeled.
Let's start over. A child needs a father, right?
No way. I'd never want someone like you as a father. I don't ever want to see your face again. Michael, taken aback by my outright laughter, was left speechless and in shock. Leaving him behind, Olivia, Sarah, and I left the venue together. After that, Olivia and Michael got divorced. Olivia's father was furious, vowing to claim alimony by any means necessary. I also filed for alimony and child support through a lawyer. Michael ended up with over $150,000 in debt, working tirelessly day and night, looking worn out. Meanwhile, I've been having enjoyable times having lunch with Olivia and Sarah. Furthermore, at 40, I've achieved my dream of owning my own shop. Lately, my 5-year-old Alice has started showing interest in nails, playing nail salon games with me. In those moments of my beloved daughter's endless smiles, I simply felt the joy of being alive, as a serene calmness washed over my heart.
Actually, I've told my wife's mother that both my parents died of illness.
The son I raised alone said this to me with a smirk. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Today was his wedding day, and I was just about to go and greet his fiancée's parents before the ceremony started. Since there had been no meeting between the two families, I hadn't had the chance to greet them until today. As I was caught off guard by what my son said, I couldn't grasp the situation and felt bewildered. "What are you talking about? I'm supposed to be dead." When I asked him, he answered triumphantly,
Yes, my wife's family is wealthy, and they're not the kind of people someone cruel like you should meet. I hated the idea of them having to deal with you, so I buried your existence, you know.
"Then why did you invite me to the wedding? If you wanted me to be considered dead, my being here would be inconvenient for him." Then my son burst out laughing.
Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony. Oh, this is so funny.
His mocking laughter reminded me so much of my ex-husband. Feeling a chill throughout my body, I suddenly became calm and looked at my son with cold eyes. He continued to laugh, oblivious to my reaction, and blurted out,
Now I can finally cut ties with a grandma I hate. Just disappear.
At my son's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I'd been waiting for those words.
Huh?
My son looked puzzled. I firmly told him, "As you wish, let's sever our ties. I'm leaving now. My name is Tiffany. I'm 52 years old. I have a husband whom I married after an office romance. His name is David. We worked in different departments, but David was a celebrity in the office, so I had known about him since I first joined the company. This was because David had a handsome face and a friendly demeanor, which made him very popular among women. I had been quietly attracted to David from the beginning. One day, there was a joint drinking party with David's department, and that's where we quickly hit it off. David and I happened to be from the same hometown, so the conversation flowed easily, and we really clicked. Soon after, David confessed his feelings to me, and I vividly remember feeling over the moon with this unexpected turn of events. Of course, I accepted, and that's how we started dating. My relationship with David was going perfectly. He was always calm, and we got along so well that we never even had a single argument. Then, exactly 1 year from when we started dating on day, David took me to a well-known restaurant with a beautiful night view. As we were nearing the end of our meal, David, looking nervous, began to speak.
"Tiffany, I'm truly happy that I met you. If you're willing, would you marry me? I think we could make a great couple.
he said as he opened a box with a ring in it, creating a scene straight out of a drama. With tears of joy, I accepted, and he placed the engagement ring on my left ring finger. Soon after, we registered our marriage, had a grand wedding ceremony, and received blessings from many people. At that moment, I felt like I was the happiest person in the world. I had no doubt that David and I would live a happy life together. However, my hopes were quickly shattered. Right after we got married, David began staying away from home, claiming he had overtime work or business dinners. Moreover, the once kind David suddenly became distant and indifferent towards me.
Hey, David, can you come home early today? Let's have dinner together. I'm thinking of making your favorite beef stew.
Shut up. Just eat by yourself. I think I'll be late again tonight. All right, I'm off to work.
He slammed the door as I stood alone in the entryway. Confused by David's sudden change, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Since David wanted me to, I had quit my job to become a full-time homemaker, and I spent my days alone at home, tirelessly doing housework. During these lonely days, I was thrilled to discover I was pregnant. I hoped that maybe David would come home earlier once our child was born. Time passed, and 3 days after the expected due date, I gave birth to a healthy boy. We named him Eugene, and David, holding our newborn Eugene like a treasure, was moved to tears. Seeing him like this, I thought we could live happily as a family of 3. However, he soon started staying away from home again and stopped contributing much money to the household. Suspicious of David's actions, I decided to take a drastic step and follow him. After leaving Eugene with my parents, I followed David after he left work and saw him stop in front of an apartment. When he rang the bell, a beautiful woman came out from inside. David and the woman smiled at each other and went inside together. He was having an affair. As I reeled from the reality before my eyes, something inside me snapped. After that, I acted quickly. I used my savings from before I was married to hire a private investigator to look into David's activities. Soon, they gathered evidence that David was having an affair with that woman. Apparently, the woman's name was Jessica, and she seemed to be his classmate from college. I confronted David immediately to demand an explanation, but he was defiant.
Yay, that's right. I've been with Jessica for years, long before I married you. But you know, Jessica is high maintenance and hopeless at household chores. So she's not really suitable as a marriage partner. In contrast, you're plain and domestic, which made you perfect as a wife in the sense of a housekeeper. That's why I married you. Plus, my parents were nagging me to get married.
David never loved me from the beginning. I was merely chosen because I wouldn't cost much and was suitable as a housekeeper. His appalling words left me feeling devastated.
Who else would marry someone ugly like you? Have you ever looked in the mirror? Someone at your level getting married to me? There had to be a catch, right?
With that, David burst into laughter. Was he always this hideously joyful?
Is Jessica the reason you stopped bringing money home?
Somehow managing to muster my voice, I asked.
Exactly. Jessica's into the latest trends and loves fashion, so she's always asking me for bags, cosmetics, and stuff. Honestly, her looks and body are top-notch, but it costs a fortune, LOL. But I end up buying them for her anyway.
David's face as he said this was smug and vulgar.
Please, let's get a divorce.
When I finally said it, David snorted in disdain.
Yay, whatever. I never loved you or anything. Oh, what a mistake marrying you was. It was all meaningless, just a waste of time.
David never apologized. Instead, he continued to hurl abuse at me until the end. After that, I demanded alimony and child support from David and divorced him. However, David, who always disliked saving money, soon fell behind on payments. He seemed to have quit his job and disappeared, so I couldn't bring a lawsuit against him. All I could do was pull myself together and focus on raising Eugene well, trying to forget about David. When Eugene turned 1, I placed him in daycare and managed to find a job and started working again. From then on, I raised Eugene on my own. It was tough managing work, household chores, and childcare all by myself, but I did my best not to let Eugene feel the strain of being raised by a single parent. Until he finished elementary school, Eugene was a well-behaved, mother-loving child. Though he was a bit mischievous, he had almost no troubles with friends, and we managed to live quietly and peacefully together. However, when he started middle school, Eugene began to verbally abuse me.
Useless old hag. It's your fault I have to live in poverty. My life is a mess because of you, damn old hag.
As he ransacked the room, Eugene screamed these things unilaterally at me. Come on, Eugene, calm down. Let's talk this through. Even as I tried to soothe him, he wouldn't listen, and instead yelled, "Shut up," and struck me. Though still a middle schooler, Eugene was almost as big as an adult man, and his punch knocked me to the ground, groaning. Looking down at me, Eugene muttered with utter disgust,
"You make me sick, old lady."
Then, he retreated to his room. This happened repeatedly. Despite my attempts to reach out, Eugene firmly kept his heart closed off to me. Verbal abuse and violence were the norm, and Eugene often deliberately threw all the food I cooked right into the trash in front of me. Seeing my shocked expression, Eugene laughed maniacally, his face resembling his father's when confronted about his affair. Tired of Eugene's behavior, living with him became increasingly painful for me, and gradually, my affection for Eugene faded away. Still, I felt a responsibility to take care of him until he was an adult, so I scrimped and saved desperately to gather funds for his college expenses. Eugene got into his college of choice and began living on his own as soon as he started university.
Hag, you're going to miss me leaving, ho? You're going to live a lonely life from now on. Oh, and don't you dare forget to send me money every month. If you're even a day late, I won't let it slide.
Eugene seemed to think I would be lonely without him, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I was genuinely relieved that Eugene was moving out. After all his verbal and physical abuse, I was honestly surprised he still thought I loved him. It seemed he truly believed parental love was unconditional. But that's not always the case. Even parents are human and have hearts. Continuous terrible treatment from a son can extinguish any feelings of love. Since Eugene left home during the spring break before starting university, I have been living peaceful days. I never missed a month of sending money, but Eugene never bothered to thank me with even a phone call. However, that was fine by me. I didn't want anything more to do with Eugene. Years passed, and Eugene graduated from university and got a job at a certain company. One day, 3 years after starting his job, Eugene came home for the first time in a long while.
Hi, Mom. Long time no see. How have you been?
Eugene, whom I hadn't seen for years, had a gentle smile. Yes, I've been fine. And you, Eugene, have you been doing well? I asked, somewhat bewildered. It had been a very long time since he had called me Mom instead of hurling insults.
Yo, I'm working hard. I'm in sales, so it's tough, but I'm hanging in there. Man, I never thought working would be this hard,
he said with a laugh, almost as if he had returned to the kind son he used to be. After catching up a bit, Eugene started, So,
Mom, I want to apologize. I was really harsh to you during my student years, wasn't I? But, you know, it was my adolescence. I was going through my rebellious phase, so it couldn't be helped.
His words, excusing the verbal abuse and violence as mere teenage rebellion, were hard to accept. However, I chose to remain silent and just listen to what he had to say.
I really am sorry now, Mom. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. No matter how many times I apologize, it won't be enough. But I'm really sorry,
he said, bowing his head. Are you really sorry? It was the first time I had ever heard an apology from Eugene's lips, so I was taken aback.
Yo, I really am sorry. I'm 25 now and finally an adult, and I've come to realize just how terrible the things I did as a kid were. I'm sorry.
As Eugene repeatedly apologized, I softly told him, "It's okay, I got it now." If Eugene was truly remorseful, I thought I might forgive him. I no longer had any affection left for Eugene, but I was willing to accept his apology.
Thank you, Mom.
Eugene's face brightened instantly, and he beamed with a full smile.
Actually, I have another big piece of news.
Big news. I tilted my head, curious about what it could be.
I'm getting married.
Really? I was surprised. I hadn't imagined Eugene getting married. But then again, Eugene was already 25 years old. It wasn't strange for him to decide to marry at this age.
She's someone I met through work. Her name is Sarah, and she's really cute and a great person,
Eugene said with a happy smile. That's wonderful. Congratulations. As I congratulated him, Eugene's smile seemed to twist slightly. His smile twisted slightly, looking insincerely smug, which gave me a bad feeling. And indeed, my intuition was about to be proven right.
Mom, I have a favor to ask.
What is it? I felt uneasy inside but asked calmly.
Could you give me a wedding gift? Look, I just apologized for my past behavior, so we're even, right? You're my only parent, after all. So a little celebration money would be appropriate, right? I mean, even though we lived poorly, you must have some savings, right? Please.
As I listened to Eugene's words, I felt a chill in my heart. So this was his true intention. His earlier apologies were also just to wheedle money out of me. He wasn't truly remorseful. Eugene looked at me with expectant eyes, and I internally sighed deeply. I could have rightfully sent him away without a word, but I thought not giving anything for his wedding might be too harsh. So, as a final act of compassion, I decided to give him a checkbook with a few $1,000s in it. It's not much, but take this check. Eugene received the check from me, and overly delighted.
Yay, thanks, Mom. Well, I've got what I needed, so I'm heading out now. Oh, I'll get in touch about the wedding details.
With that, he quickly left the house. A few days later, Eugene called to inform me about the wedding date and location.
Make sure you're not late on the day. See ya.
Wait a minute. I got the time and place for the wedding, but isn't there going to be a meeting between the two families first? I haven't even met your fiancée, Sarah, yet. I asked because it's usual to have a meeting between families before the wedding, but Eugene started laughing.
Oh yeah, the meeting. Well, her parents are busy people, so it doesn't look like it's going to happen. We'll just meet on the wedding day, all right?
Though I felt uneasy about Eugene's attitude, I thought it must be unavoidable if they were busy, and I accepted it. Okay, I understand. What about Sarah then?
Sarah's also busy, you know, with all the wedding prep and stuff. What was it? Oh yeah, she's going to bridal beauty treatments and all. So, it's fine to meet her on the wedding day too.
All right. If Sarah and her parents are okay with that, then I don't mind. And so, I ended up going to the wedding day without having met Eugene's fiancée or her parents. As I arrived at the wedding venue and was about to greet Eugene's fiancée's parents before the ceremony, I was called from behind.
Hey, Mom. Where are you going?
I turned around to find Eugene.
I was going to greet your fiancée's parents. You know, since we haven't had a family meeting yet, I haven't had the chance to greet them.
When I said this, Eugene coldly snapped back.
There's no need for that. Who said you could just go greet them on your own?
What? But it's just polite to greet them, I replied, confused, but Eugene smirked cruelly, much like he did in his student days.
My fiancée's parents aren't the type of people a poor person like you should be greeting. Her family is wealthy, from a completely different world than you.
Saying that, Eugene looked toward the entrance of the venue and waved to someone.
Hey, Dad. Over here, over here.
Following Eugene's gaze reflexively, I saw the last person in the world I wanted to encounter walking towards us.
Eugene, congratulations on your wedding.
The grinning man was my ex-husband, David. Why? I was speechless. I had no idea Eugene and David were connected. I was stunned. David looked at me and scoffed mockingly.
Long time no see, Tiffany. You're as plain and ugly as ever. Getting older and all these wrinkles and spots. You're totally an old hag now, aren't you? LOL. But hey, you look younger than I expected. I thought you'd look even more miserable.
It seems you haven't changed at all. I meant his character, but David, misunderstanding, laughed happily.
Right. I make an effort to stay young. Still a handsome guy, right? I'm still irresistible to women, you know.
Right. Exasperated, that was all I could manage to say.
Thanks for coming today, Dad.
Eugene smiled at David, and David returned a beaming smile to Eugene. They ignored me and chatted amiably. When their conversation paused, Eugene turned to me and declared,
From now on, he's my only parent. Actually, my fiancée's parents think my mother died of an illness.
What are you talking about? Then why did you invite me today? I asked, but Eugene burst into laughter.
Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony. This is so funny.
David joined Eugene in laughter. Their mocking laughter was indeed very similar.
Now I can finally cut ties with the old hag I hate. Just disappear.
At Eugene's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I'd been waiting for those words.
Huh?
Eugene looked stunned. Let's do as you say and cut ties then. I'm leaving now. With that, I turned and walked away. As I left the venue, I silently scoffed at Eugene, who knew nothing of what was truly going on. 3 months later, today being my day off from work, I had a leisurely morning brewing coffee. When the doorbell rang, I went to answer it and found Eugene standing there. There stood Eugene, wearing shabby clothes, with a scruffy beard and a vacant look in his eyes. He looked completely different from how he had appeared on his wedding day, and I was admittedly taken aback. Can a person really change their appearance this much in such a short time?
Mom, help me. Please, just let me come inside for now.
I won't let you inside. We can talk here, so please keep it brief. With a feeble voice, Eugene pleaded for help, and I responded firmly. Eugene, still with vacant eyes, began to speak.
Actually, Dad suddenly told me he has a huge debt and asked if I could help out. I was shocked, but I asked Sarah for help. Since she's wealthy, I thought she'd happily pay off her husband's father's debts, but Sarah refused, and on top of that, she said she didn't think she knew me at all, and called off the engagement.
It appears that Eugene was begged by David to help with the debt repayment, And when he turned to his wealthy fiancée, she firmly refused and even broke off their engagement.
I had no idea Dad had any debts. I had never heard such a thing.
As Eugene told me this while crying, I quietly asked, "How long have you been meeting with your father?"
Since I started middle school, he approached me on my way home from school.
It seems that David had been ambushing middle school Eugene. Since I divorced David when Eugene was an infant, it was natural that Eugene wouldn't remember David's face. However, Eugene came to believe David was his father after being shown an old photo that David had kept. It seems the photo was a family snapshot taken shortly after Eugene was born, featuring the three of us. I was surprised that David still had such a photo, but he probably kept it thinking it might be useful someday. I can assert that he didn't keep that photo out of affection.
Then, Dad told me a lot of bad things about you, and I believed them.
What kind of bad things did he say? I could guess what they might be, but I asked anyway.
He told me things like, "You're poor because you're with your mom." Poor thing.
It seems Eugene had been fed lines by David such as, "You're poor because you're with your mom. You would have a better life if you lived with me. And I really wanted to take custody of you, but your mom forcibly took it away." This was why Eugene started to verbally and physically abuse me from around the time he started middle school.
Dad always said he was wealthy and wore expensive-looking suits, so I completely trusted everything he said. But now that I think about it, maybe those suits were just rented.
That sounds about right. A man who didn't pay alimony or child support at the time of our divorce, who has no savings and evaporates after quitting his job, being wealthy. That's hard to believe. He probably approached you out of desperation because he's drowning in debt. Eugene hung his head at my words.
So, everything Dad said was a lie. He kept telling me to marry a wealthy woman, using me all along.
So, what brings you here exactly? This has nothing to do with me. As I asked with a sigh, Eugene burst out yelling.
Don't say that. Actually, Sarah was related to an important client at the company I worked for. Trying to marry her while hiding my real father's huge debt, and then getting dumped for asking her for money, has spread all over the company, and I'm about to be fired. Dad keeps asking me for money, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. Mom, please help me.
Even as Eugene pleaded with tears and snot running down his face, I felt no pity. There's nothing I can do for you. We're disowned, remember.
But I apologize. At the wedding, I was deceived by my father, so I said we should cut ties, but I didn't really mean it.
As Eugene desperately tried to make excuses, I looked at him coldly. It's not just about the wedding. I raised you alone since you were a baby. To ensure you didn't go hungry, I juggled full-time jobs and side jobs, and I also strived to keep up with housework and cooking. Yet, you only thanked me until you were in elementary school. After that, you repeated verbal abuse and violence.
That's because Dad filled my head with lies. I've already apologized for that, haven't I?
While he did apologize, it was only to extract a wedding gift from me, not out of genuine remorse. I let out a heavy sigh. You've never truly apologized to me. Besides, no amount of lies justifies the verbal abuse and violence you directed at me. Furthermore, I repeatedly tried to face him, but he did not answer me in the slightest. I have no love left for you. Even seeing you in this broken state doesn't stir any desire to help you. Please leave. As I firmly stated this, Eugene's face turned red with anger, and he shouted,
Don't joke with me. Aren't you my mother? A mother should help her child. You're inhuman.
I don't have a son. Please don't yell here. Just go home.
Damn you, old hag.
Enraged, Eugene raised his right arm to strike me. I immediately shrank back and prepared myself for the pain that was about to hit me. but nothing happened, no matter how long I waited. When I cautiously looked up at Eugene, he was groaning, ouch, and clutching his right shoulder. Maybe he injured his right shoulder. For a moment, I wondered why, but then quickly regained my senses and shut and locked the front door. Eugene was yelling from behind the door, "Hey, we're not done talking yet. I'll call the police if you try anything else. Just go home." I responded, and hearing the word police seemed to have an effect, as he retorted with a parting shot, "Damn you," and left. A month later, I received a call from Eugene. I did not answer, but an answering machine had been left for me, so I played it back and heard his unruly voice.
"Mom, listen. Dad won't let me go. He keeps asking me for money, and if I refuse, he becomes violent. I can't say no. He's taking most of my paycheck."
The way Eugene showed signs of a shoulder injury when he appeared last month might have been due to David's violence. Even though I realized this, I certainly didn't feel any sympathy for Eugene. Violence was something he had inflicted on me endlessly. David is taller and more physically fit than Eugene, and having practiced judo in his youth, Eugene probably stands no chance against him. I could imagine that he was probably unable to fight back.
"Dad seems to have a gambling addiction. Even though I give him money, he spends it before he can pay off any debts. The debt never decreases. He won't stop gambling, either. I managed to keep my job, but I was demoted to a less important position, so even though my salary is low, Dad takes so much that I can't save anything. I might be reaching my breaking point."
Eugene was sobbing, and it was clear he was desperate.
"Mom, please, lend me some money. Save me. I'm begging you. It's a lifetime request."
That's where the voicemail ended. After listening to the voicemail, I immediately blocked Eugene's number. There's no way I would lend him money, and I want nothing to do with him anymore. Months later, one of Eugene's co-workers came to see me, and I learned what is he up to. Eugene had secretly recorded David's verbal abuse and violence, and after submitting this evidence to the police, David was arrested for assault. He'll be spending some time in prison. However, Eugene's mental state deteriorated, and he eventually collapsed, leading to his admission into a psychiatric ward. About a week ago, I happened to see Eugene. As I was driving past his workplace, I saw a man in a disheveled suit, looking gaunt and emaciated. It took me a moment to realize it was indeed Eugene. From a distance, it was clear he was living a miserable life, but it turned out he had been admitted to a hospital. Still, I thought it was just desserts. I hope he uses his time in the hospital to reflect seriously on his actions. Though, knowing Eugene, real reflection might be too much to expect. In any case, it no longer concerns me. Eugene's coworker told me that he had asked him to come to me if anything happened. Eugene probably wants me to look after him and manage his finances while he's hospitalized, but I firmly refuse. I politely thanked Eugene's coworker and sent him on his way. Of course, I have no intention of visiting Eugene. Soon after, I moved and started a new life in a new town, ready for a fresh start. Having been freed from the long years of suffering under Eugene and David's torment, I began to engage in hobbies like gardening and joined an outdoor club. I'm living a more vibrant life than before and enjoying every day.
What on earth is going on? After finishing my business trip, I returned home for the first time in 2 years. Today, Michael should be off work. I was thrilled at the thought of seeing him after such a long time, but the moment I opened the door of the house, a strange smell wafted through, and my excitement instantly calmed down. However, at the same time, an indescribable sense of anxiety overwhelmed me. I felt like something serious had happened. Michael? I called out Michael's name as I searched around the house. But there was no sign of him anywhere. This is the only place left. I took a breath and slowly opened the bedroom door. No, Michael. What is this? Indeed, there was Michael, but he had become completely different from Michael I knew. My name is Sandra Brown. I'm 32 years old. After graduating from college, I left my hometown and got a job as a sales employee at an advertising company. Honestly, I had never dreamt of the industry since I was young. However, a lecture I attended at my college sparked my interest in advertising. How to create ads that attract people? What elements should be included to make an advertisement appealing? Before I knew it, I was completely engrossed in advertising and design. As I was preparing for job hunting, it was natural for me to delve into studying for a career in the advertising industry. As a result, I successfully got a job at the company I aimed for. I still remember how happy I was. It was sad to have to leave my hometown, but my heart was thrilled to have grasped my dream. However, once I joined the company, I realized it was much harder than I thought. Of course, I wasn't underestimating it. Still, reality and imagination were indeed different. I have to visit clients, make materials, find new clients, and more. There were many fun moments, but the frequent overtime, working on weekends, and business trips were tough. The kindness of all my colleagues was my salvation. Eventually, I started to wonder if this was really what I wanted to do. But then, a supportive presence appeared in my life. It was about 2 years after I started working. I attended a drinking party invited by a colleague, but feeling out of place, I was drinking quietly by myself when a man approached me.
Are you okay, being alone like this?
Yes, I'm fine. That man was Michael, who would later become my husband. He seemed to have noticed me drinking alone and come and talk to me.
You seemed a bit lonely. Would you like to join me for a drink?
Absolutely. At my response, he smiled kindly. As we talked, I found out that he also worked in sales. From then on, we hit it off, often venting about work. We quickly exchanged contact information to arrange a dinner together. I never imagined getting along with someone of the opposite sex at a casual drinking party. I still think it's a miracle that I met my future husband. A week later, it was the day for Michael and I to meet. Honestly, I felt a bit down. After all, that was just a booze-fueled occasion. Things just seemed to work out with the help of alcohol. But will it work if we meet in sober conditions today? With some trepidation, I met up with Michael. We entered the restaurant he had reserved. In the end, my fears were unfounded, and I had a great time with him. He was a real gentleman, interesting to talk to. He really seemed like the ideal man.
Sandra, you're such a wonderful person.
Oh, stop. Wonderful is an overstatement. He would give compliments that most people wouldn't say outright, seemingly without a second thought. Gradually, I found myself thinking about him more and more. Afterward, Michael and I started seeing each other frequently, and on our third date, he confessed his feelings, and we became a couple. The time I spent with him was truly blissful. Thanks to him, I managed to get through the tough times at work.
Are you okay? Not too tired?
Yeah, I'm good. I tried not to show my fatigue in front of him, but it seems he always understood. He always cared and would hug me gently each time. 2 years of such life had passed. Michael finally proposed. Of course, I accepted the proposal, and we became husband and wife.
I will definitely make you happy.
I can never forget Michael's smiling face as he said that. After that, we completed the formal greetings with each other's families and registered our marriage. The first time I met my Margaret, during the greetings, she was so kind, and I felt relieved. It turned out that my Phil had already passed away.
If there's anything, please feel free to talk to me about it, okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Surrounded by kind people, I wondered how lucky I was. I felt like I could overcome anything with them by my side. I was looking forward to our future life together. But then, I got caught up in something unexpected. I later regretted marrying Michael, because a shocking truth came to light soon after our marriage. Michael couldn't do any household chores at all.
Sorry, I really can't do any housework.
What? How have you been living until now?
Well, I just bought food from convenience stores or supermarkets, and when laundry piled up, I took it back to my parents' house. I don't even know how to use a washing machine.
How could this be? Why didn't I realize this while we were dating? Michael's place always seemed neat when I visited, and he didn't seem like someone who couldn't do any housework at all. From what I gathered, he must have had his mother clean the house, or maybe he just tidied up to make the room look presentable. That must be something only he knows. Since then, I started teaching Michael how to do household chores. But whether he didn't want to learn or couldn't learn, he remained unable to do anything I taught him. Eventually, I gave up teaching him and took on all the household duties myself. It was hard at times, but somehow I got used to this life. About 2 years after we got married, we had saved enough money to buy a new family home. Living in a family home is more relaxed than in an apartment, as there's less worry about noise. The neighbors were all nice, making our life even more comfortable than before. Michael and I each had our own spacious rooms, and I was happy to have more time to immerse myself in my hobbies. However, this also meant that cleaning became quite a chore. The apartment we lived in before buying the house was quite small, so cleaning was relatively easy, but it's different with a house. Since Michael was utterly incapable of doing household chores, I ended up doing everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry. Even after getting a house, I was still in charge of all the household chores. Michael seemed to have given up on learning chores, and no matter how busy I was with work or household tasks, he never helped. Perhaps it was after buying the house, I began to notice something off about Michael. He seemed distant, or something like that. He didn't pay much attention to me anymore. Even when I spoke to him, his responses were curt, and it seemed like he was coming home later and later. Well, we had been married for a few years, so maybe it was normal. Still, I couldn't help feeling lonely. Hey, what time will you be coming home today?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, here's your lunch.
Thanks.
More than anger, I felt sadness and anxiety swirling inside me. Had I unknowingly done something to make Michael dislike me? But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't pinpoint anything. Well, he hadn't complained about anything to me, so maybe I shouldn't worry too much. Eventually, I began to think that this was just his true nature. That was the easiest way for me to make sense of it. It would be different if he complained about the food being bad or the house being untidy. There were several other troubling things about him. He would come home late without telling me what time. He often left his lunch I made in the morning and messed up the room even though he knew I would be cleaning. I often found his laundry scattered around his room. At first, I thought he must be tired and didn't reprimand him much. But no matter how many days passed, he didn't change his behavior. Seeing this, I finally lost my patience and confronted him. "Hey, can you please be more considerate? It seems like you just scatter things around, thinking I'll clean up. I work just like you, managing the household chores is hard enough already. Can't you be a little more considerate of me?"
Huh? Are you saying I don't care about you?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you really cared, you'd take care of your own things more. And the last time I went into your room to clean, it was so messy. How can you even sleep there? Despite saying you're coming home late, you hardly tell me exactly when. Don't you think something's off? I let out all the frustrations I had been holding in at him. But he wouldn't really listen to what I was saying.
I'm tired too. You're going to clean up anyway, right? And I told you I'd be late, so it should be fine. You're just too fussy.
Fussy, am I? Ultimately, Michael never really listened to what I had to say. From that day on, he became even more distant towards me. Not only did he continue to respond coldly when I spoke to him, but he also started to ignore me. Even when I cleaned his room or took care of his things, he no longer thanked me. I considered giving up on the household chores several times, but I knew that no matter how messy the room got, he would just live in it. On the other hand, I couldn't stand living in a dirty room myself. I just hate to live in discomfort. After much thought, I decided to continue doing the chores for my own sake. As time passed, it seemed like Michael's attitude was returning to normal somewhat, but he remained indifferent towards me. Should I be happy that he at least started to tell me when he would be home? I wondered where the Michael I knew before marriage had gone. I had no idea he was hiding such a nature. If I had known, I might have reconsidered getting married. I began to feel the stress of work and home life every day. About half a year into this routine, my work on business trips suddenly started to increase. With both day trips and overnight stays, I was leading a very hectic life. On top of that, I had to manage the household and take care of Michael. The burden on me had become overwhelmingly large. However, perhaps because he saw what I was going through, Michael began to change gradually.
Hey, Sandra, are you okay?
What do you mean?
You know, with the chores and work, everything.
Well, here, I'm okay, I guess. I was taken aback by his sudden concern. Was Michael actually worried about me? It was such a rare occurrence. Was it in my dreams? Afterward, Michael continued to show concern for me.
Have you been on business trips a lot recently? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's tough, but at least the pay is good.
I see. I'm glad you're okay if you say so.
He was hiding something, or if he was genuinely concerned. I had my doubts, but despite everything, he seemed to be genuinely concerned about me. Just knowing that made me feel happy. But Michael's late returns remained unchanged. Hey, why are there so many nights you come home late?
Is it really that often? I have a lot going on. like overtime and socializing with my boss.
I see. Indeed, his pay stubs showed overtime pay. And I could understand the socializing part. Still, it seemed excessive. I even wondered if Michael might be cheating. I had thought about that. However, I just couldn't see him as that type of person. I still believed in him somewhere deep down. I couldn't understand why I was so convinced he would never cheat. Even as my business trips increased, Michael made no effort to do household chores. Incapable of even heating up a ready-made curry, he resorted to convenience store meals or eating out. When I was away on long business trips, he would even ask his mother to come over to our house. I had hoped he would learn to manage himself, but he seemed to have no intention of doing so. It was more reassuring to have his mother over than to let him mess up the house. But that, undoubtedly, increased her burden. I'm really sorry for the trouble my frequent business trips have caused.
It's okay, Sandra. You haven't done anything wrong, but sooner or later, we need to teach that boy how to take care of the house. I'm worried about the future. Well, I can teach him household chores anytime.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'll talk to him too.
Really, thank you.
Margaret spoke kindly, but her tone seemed a bit cold. Of course, Michael was unaware of such a conversation between me and his mother. He just lay on the sofa, watching TV as usual.
This show is so funny.
Oblivious to my presence in the kitchen, he started talking to me. What show?
Oh, sorry. Are you washing the dishes?
He said sorry but didn't seem to feel guilty. At first, I was angry at him for this, but I've gotten used to it now. It's sad when I think about it. However, the day was coming when this routine would end. One day, I was offered an opportunity for an overseas business trip. It was a stressful job, but fulfilling. I could have declined, but I decided to take it. The trip would last 2 years. During that time, Michael could go back to his parents' house or try to manage the household chores himself. That night, when I discussed the trip with him, he was surprised.
Are you going to be on the business trip for that long?
Yo, that's right. I could have declined, but I wanted to challenge myself. I know it's going to be a burden on you during this time. Not seeing each other for a while was certain. I would have been happy if he felt even a little lonely, but it didn't seem like he had those feelings much.
I got it. Good luck. I'll try to manage things on my own.
He said that with a big smile. Are you sure you'll be okay?
Yay, don't worry.
His reaction made it seem like he couldn't wait for me to leave. Months after the overseas business trip was announced, the day to depart finally arrived. Are you really okay with this?
Yo, don't worry. If anything happens, I'll just ask my mom for help.
I see.
Anyway, are you on time?
Oh, I might be running late. I'm heading out now. Michael seemed eager for me to leave, probably wanting some space to himself. Honestly, it was infuriating, but there was no time to complain. I sincerely said goodbye to him and left the house. For the next 2 years, I worked overseas. There were many challenges, but it was an enjoyable life. This experience has become nourishment for my life. I was certain of it. While overseas, I kept in touch with Michael regularly. I was relieved to hear that he was able to live with the help of his mother. Initially, we mostly talked on the phone, but gradually shifted to text messages. From the messages, I could tell he was doing good, so I wasn't too worried. 2 years later, my business trip ended, and the day to return home arrived. I was somewhat excited to see Michael face to face after such a long time. My steps were light. He would be home, taking the day off as usual. I wanted to ask about his life while I was away and share my experiences abroad. Excited, I unlocked the front door. But my excitement quickly faded. A foul smell wafted through the air. It was causing me to break out in a cold sweat. It felt like something terrible had happened. I set my luggage down and searched the house. Where was the source of the smell? Where was Michael? My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I opened the door to the room. I checked each room one by one, and finally, I opened the door to Michael's bedroom. What is this? I couldn't believe my eyes. What on earth is going on? There was Michael, mummified. I couldn't comprehend what was happening in front of me. I need to call the police. I quickly grabbed my phone and called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived at the house. As the investigation progressed, I, being the first to discover the scene, was questioned. I had been messaging with someone up until just before the end of my trip, feeling suspicion that someone else was involved. I've been on my business trip for about 2 years. When I came back, I found it like this.
A business trip, I see.
If you find the business trip dubious, you can check with my company. I just got back, so I can show evidence like my plane ticket.
May we see that, please?
I complied with the officer's request, providing contact information for my company and evidence like my plane ticket. As a result, my suspicions were cleared. However, that raised more questions. Who had been replying to my messages? It was strange that Michael hadn't sought help until his death, and someone from work should have visited the house before it got to this point. I discussed these points with the police and showed them the messages as evidence.
Indeed. You've been communicating with him until recently.
What does this mean? The more I fought, the more baffling everything seemed. The officers seemed suspicious and decided to conduct a thorough investigation. After initial conversation, I remembered my mill, Margaret. I spoke to the police before contacting her immediately. Margaret, actually.
What, Michael?
As I explained the situation, she's voice trembled.
Is that true? Tell me.
Yes. The police are here investigating right now.
All right, I'm coming over now,
she said and hung up. Given the close proximity of our homes, she arrived at my house in about 10 minutes.
Michael.
Ma'am, please calm down.
How can I be calm? My son is dead.
She tried to push past the police to get to Michael. Understandably, losing one's own son would be deeply saddening. I could comprehend even without children of my own.
Sandra, when did you find him?
Just now. I just got back and then.
That's terrible.
Her eyes were filled with sorrow. Later, the police explained what would happen next. Throughout the conversation, Margaret held my hand tightly, staying close to me, her body shaking. A few days later, the police shared the results of their inquiries. It appeared that during my absence, a woman other than Margaret had been coming in and out of the house. Just from hearing about her, it's clear that the woman seems suspicious. Upon asking for her description, it turned out to be a woman I didn't know. To begin with, I didn't know any woman who would visit our home like that. Fortunately, Michael hadn't locked his phone, so after speaking with the police, I checked it immediately. A woman's name caught my eye. Patricia Russell. The messages made it clear she was a work contact, but I couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship went beyond just that. Meetups, movies, drinks. From what I could gather, it seemed that Michael and Patricia were having an affair. As I went through the messages, words like hotel and date were scattered throughout the messages. It turned out she had been visiting our home and taking care of him while I was away. This can't be.
Did you find something?
Well, I told the officer about the existence of Patricia and expressed my suspicion that she was definitely the woman who had been coming and going from our house. The officer reviewed the messages and agreed with my assessment. Later, they decided to contact her directly to gather more information. A few days later, the police contacted me again. Apparently, Patricia expressed a desire to meet with me. Despite having had an affair, she dared to request a meeting with me, Michael's wife. Feeling overwhelmed by the recent events, such thoughts crossed my mind. According to the police, she was not involved in the main incident. That only deepened my curiosity about who had been messaging me. Okay, in a week, then, amidst growing doubts, I decided to meet with her. Maybe she knew something? What were her thoughts on the affair? I wondered. Eager for the truth, I awaited the day. A week later, I went to the specified meeting room and met Patricia face to face. I thought she had no common sense, because she was a cheater. However, my thoughts were quickly overturned.
I'm truly sorry.
What?
I had an affair with Michael. I frequented your house. I know it's unforgivable. I'm so sorry.
She immediately apologized upon seeing me. Well.
Oh, I'm sorry. So sudden.
How did you and he? I asked her how she met Michael. And I asked what their relationship was like before the affair. As expected, she said they were superior and team members at work, and she became his direct supervisor in their work relationship. They became more and more involved in sexual relations. She had been taking care of Michael while I was on business trips. But then, she revealed a shocking fact.
I didn't know Michael had died. I found out from the police.
That's odd. What happened at work?
He quit over a year ago.
He quit?
Yes, he was tired of it all, and it's hard for me to say this, but he said he wanted to divorce you and marry me. He thought he could live off my salary without working.
Hearing about his selfishness, I was speechless. To think he wanted to leave me to marry Patricia, and then quit his job to live off her salary? I was a bit shocked to realize that he was more selfish than I had initially thought. Thank you for sharing this with me.
It's nothing.
But you didn't know he had died? When did you stop visiting?
Over a year ago.
Why? Even though Michael wanted to marry you? I couldn't help but speak harshly. The conversation turned tense, but Patricia explained what happened. After a few months of my departure, she used to visit our house every 5 days, primarily to care for Michael. At first, it seemed to be going well. She felt like an exciting new married life. But her enthusiasm quickly faded. The reason was Michael's inability to maintain the household. Despite being cautioned, he made no effort to tidy up. Over time, her feelings for him completely cooled off. And after she broke up with him, she stopped coming to the house. After quitting his job, he contacted her repeatedly. He wanted her to come back and to start over. The messages varied, but consistently expressed his desire to reconcile. However, she no longer felt the same way and continued to ignore him. Eventually, the communications from him stopped completely. Since then, she seemed to have no knowledge of what became of him. That's what happened.
Yes.
It's good to know what happened while I was away. Thank you.
I'm the one who should apologize.
Patricia seemed genuinely remorseful, continuously apologizing. While her sincerity was evident, whether I could forgive her was another matter. Fortunately, she offered to pay compensation, which I accepted. It was clear she had no direct involvement in the incident. But the mystery only deepened. During this time, the police received a tip from our neighbors. The person who had seen my milk, Margaret, entering the house just days before my return. The police also viewed her with suspicion due to this eyewitness information. If that's true, then she must know something. Without prior knowledge, I hadn't thought to check messages between Michael and his mother. Until now, it never occurred to me that she might know something, so I never thought to check the messages between them. Upon reflection, I think if I had looked at all the messages from the start, things might not have escalated to this point. I went through each messages carefully. Then, a particular message caught my eye. Was he feeling ill? After Michael was dumped by Patricia and left alone, it seems he fell ill. He couldn't seek help from Patricia or me. In that situation, Michael reached out to his own mother. However, the response from her was cold and distant. Just deal with it on your own. She had said other things that seemed like she was abandoning him. I'm tired of caring about you. Whatever happens to you doesn't matter to me. It was hard to believe that his mother, who seemed to adore Michael so much and grieved his death more than anyone, would say such things. But looking at the messages, it was clear she was involved somehow. Reading those messages from her confirmed my suspicions. After submitting the messages from the smartphone to the police, they decided to summon her for questioning. The police contacted her, and it was arranged for us to speak at the police station on a later date. I was allowed to be present, so I decided to attend. On the day of the meeting, Margaret arrived at the police station looking somewhat irritable.
Hasn't the culprit been caught? What about that woman who was taking care of Michael?
Please, calm down.
After being admonished by the officer, she crossed her legs and glared at us. The police then relayed information from neighbors about her frequent visits to the house and the messages I had seen.
The neighbors saw me. That's no proof. She's much more suspicious than I am.
But you were seen entering and leaving the house recently, right?
Where's the proof?
It's not just about proof. We've heard from several neighbors, not just one. How do you explain that?
She seemed very agitated. She was breathing heavily and snapping at the police officer. Watching this, I became even more suspicious of her. Margaret, do you really know nothing?
I don't know anything.
Is that true? How long were you visiting the house?
I don't remember.
What about the neighbors' statements? Are you suggesting the police are lying, or that the neighbors have conspired against you?
Yes, it is.
But think about it. There's no reason for them to go out of their way to frame you like this. Unless, do you have any reason to believe they would do such a thing? Despite the clear suspicion, she kept insisting she knew nothing. Even though there are witnesses, she was stubborn. Her attitude infuriated me, and I pressed her further. Initially, she insisted on her innocence, but eventually, she seemed to resign and revealed a shocking truth.
Yes, it was me. I abandoned Michael. Are you happy now?
Margaret.
Because he was just so annoying.
Though I somewhat expected it, it turned out Margaret had indeed abandoned Michael in his state. The reason being that he was bothersome, which is a rather selfish justification. He was annoying.
I was tired of him always depending on me. Just when I thought he was finally married and settled, he kept finding reasons to lean on me again. Never really learned to do any household chores, always leaving everything to others. I took care of him because I felt obligated as his parents, but honestly, I resented it. Then he caught a cold and wanted me to come over. I saw it as an opportunity and left him alone. Next thing I knew, he had passed away.
She spoke dispassionately about her feelings towards Michael. However, her feelings were not the kind a parent should have for their child. They were distorted emotions. Have you been the one replying to my messages all this time?
Yes, it was me. I thought you'd worry if suddenly the messages stopped. I knew it would come out eventually, but I figured it might buy some time.
You knew it would come out, didn't you?
Of course, but then Patricia showed up, and I thought maybe I could pin the blame on her, but that didn't work out.
She appeared somewhat frustrated. It was unbelievable that she could have abandoned him. While I was shocked, I remembered her words before my trip.
He needs to learn to do chores soon, or I'm worried about the future.
Perhaps she had already disliked him from that time. Thinking this made me feel helpless. To shift the blame like that.
Well, what other choice did I have? I didn't want to get involved with the police. If Patricia could have taken all the blame, I wouldn't have to be here.
That's just too selfish. Sure, marrying me and dealing with my frequent business trips might have increased your burden, but that's no excuse to abandon someone.
Be quiet. You don't understand how I feel.
Margaret yelled at me as if venting years of resentment. But I didn't back down and continued. I understand some of your feelings, Margaret. He never learned to do chores, always messed up the house, and then he had an affair. I was honestly furious too, but there's a difference between right and wrong. What you did constitutes a serious crime, and that fact will haunt you for a long time. As I continued to speak to her desperately, Margaret finally recognized what she had done. She will have to live with being known as the person who abandoned her son. The thought of how painful that would be.
It will follow me forever,
she muttered, tears streaming down her face.
I did that.
Please reconsider what you've done. She nodded weakly in response. Shortly after, she was taken to another room for further proceedings. Surrounded by police, she appeared smaller than ever as she was moved to another room. She was arrested for neglecting Michael's body for an extended period. The trial will determine the specific charges, which remain unclear. Listening to her story, I felt a degree of sympathy. I too had been exasperated by Michael's behavior many times. However, there are limits, and her actions were irredeemable. I hope she deeply reflects on what she did. After her arrest, I moved out immediately. I just didn't want to be in that house anymore. And now I live alone in a clean apartment. Doing chores like cleaning and laundry just for myself makes everything much easier. Yet, I can't help but have lingering thoughts of Michael. If this had been a divorce, it might have felt refreshing, but I never expected to part ways like this. Losing my husband this way made me realize I did love him. To distract from these overwhelming feelings, I immerse myself in work each day.
That night, as I was getting ready for dinner, I asked Nathan what he wanted to eat. Normally, a child would mention their favorite food like hamburgers or fried chicken, but Nathan seemed hesitant. It was more like he was puzzled by my question rather than being shy. "What's the matter? You can tell me what you like. Grandma will make anything for you." Despite my assurance, he didn't answer, so I felt like pressing any further would seem like I was blaming him. So I just told him to watch TV in the living room while he waited. I decided to prepare something that kids generally like and called Nathan to the dining table when it was time for dinner. However, Nathan didn't seem willing to sit down at the table. "What's wrong? Don't you want to eat?" Nathan shook his head vigorously in response to my question. "Then why?" Nathan looked at me with a puzzled expression and asked,
"Grandma, is it okay for me to eat today?"
I was so shocked by his question that I doubted my own hearing, thinking I might have misunderstood him. But when I asked again, Nathan's response confirmed that I hadn't heard wrong. "What? Is it okay for you to eat today? You're supposed to eat 3 meals a day, right?" Further questioning led to Nathan suddenly running out to the garden and starting to pull weeds. I was astonished by his sudden strange behavior. I stopped him from pulling weeds, hugged him, and brought him back inside.
"Why? Why do I have to stop? I'm hungry."
"You're hungry, right? That's why I prepared this meal for you. So why start pulling weeds?"
"Because Mom always says I shouldn't eat without helping out."
I was taken aback by Nathan's unexpected words and decided to ask for more details, which led to a shocking revelation. When I was 22, I fell head over heels for a man who transferred to my department from another region at the company where I was working. By chance, our homes were close, and we eventually started meeting up to go home together, even when our work schedules didn't align. One day, on a packed train ride home, I felt my heart racing as he protectively placed his body close to mine. In a moment of courage, surrounded by people, I whispered, "Would you go out with me?" Holding the sleeve of his suit, my eyes teared up from embarrassment as I confessed my love. I must have looked so sly at that moment. But he blushed and said, "Yes, Susan," and kissed me without caring about the people around us, marking the start of our relationship. Things moved quickly from there. We started living together, got married within a year, and were blessed with a child. We named our child Michael, fulfilling my dream of a happy family life. It was a moment of pure bliss. However, that happiness didn't last forever. When Michael was 3, I started to suspect my husband's late return home. With help from a friend who worked at the same company, we investigated his infidelity. I discovered he was leaving work on time, but was seen going to a hotel with a younger female colleague. That was the first time I realized his late nights were due to him meeting this woman. Clear evidence of an affair. Confronted with undeniable proof, he admitted to the affair. I felt like our happy marriage was nothing but a 4-year-long play act. I threw our rings and the divorce papers at him, taking Michael and leaving him behind. As a single mother, I worked hard to balance my job and household, raising Michael. Seeing my efforts, Michael, even as a child, did his best to help around the house to lessen my load. I remember crying at a school event when he wrote in an essay that his dream was to make life easier for me. Now, Michael is 27 and has grown into a fine adult, ready to introduce his partner, whom he wants to marry, to me.
This is Mary. Mom, I'm thinking about marrying her.
Mary, with her clear and confident manner, made a good impression on me without showing any signs of intimidation. Michael, if this is the person you've chosen, I won't oppose it. She seems very articulate and nice. Why not?
Really? So, you're okay with us getting married?
Yes, but make sure you two are happy, okay? She seems like a great catch.
I know. Mary, let's build a happy home together.
Yes? Thank you, Susan.
From my perspective, Michael and Mary seemed like a perfect match, and I gave my blessing for their marriage, sending them off to their bright future. Congratulations on your wedding, Michael, Mary. Tears of joy and a bit of embarrassment flowed at their wedding, reviving memories from the past. A year after their joyous wedding, the lovely couple welcomed their third family member, Nathan. Being there with Michael for Nathan's birth and crying tears of joy was an incredibly beautiful memory. Michael, who adores children, cried even more than Mary, who had just given birth, which was a delightfully heartwarming scene for a mother. A few years later, I received a call from Michael. He mentioned he was going on a solo business trip and asked if I could occasionally check on Mary and Nathan during his absence.
I think it'll be fine. Nathan's at that age where he's becoming quite the handful, and I'm worried. So, it doesn't have to be every day, maybe just once a week.
I understood Michael's concerns. Michael was quite a handful as a child himself, always running off the moment you took your eyes off him. It'd be a big challenge for any mother to take care of him during those energetic and sensitive years. While Michael managed on his own until now, being away on a solo assignment made him understandably anxious. All right, since you asked, I'd love to see Nathan, of course. With that, Michael left for his assignment, and I planned visits to check on the two every weekend. Feeling a bit awkward about showing up empty-handed, I packed some of Nathan's favorite snacks and some homemade dishes for them. Upon ringing the bell and letting them know I had arrived through the video intercom, Mary greeted me at the door amidst the sound of bustling footsteps.
What? Susan, what brings you here today?
Well, Michael's been really worried about the two of you while he's away, and asked me to check in.
Oh, I see. It's a bit messy, but please come in.
Though Mary seemed a bit flustered at first, it's understandable given the almost unannounced visit. Inside, Nathan, who was drying, greeted me with a smile. Reuniting with Nathan, who had naturally grown taller and had lost his baby-faced cuteness for a more boyish mischief, Here, I brought some snacks and homemade dishes for you to enjoy.
Well, thank you. Michael really worries too much. Susan, please make yourself at home today.
Taking up Mary's offer, I spent a wonderful day playing board games and card games with Nathan and watching his favorite cartoons. For dinner, we filled the table with the dishes I brought and some that Mary and I cooked together. Starting to eat, I felt a slight unease at Nathan's eagerness, reminiscent of the starving children I've seen on educational programs. Though I knew it couldn't be the case with Mary as his mother, it was inconceivable he wasn't being fed properly. Nathan, no need to rush. Your food isn't going anywhere. Despite my words, Nathan seemed too focused on his meal to listen.
Nathan's been like this around mealtime recently. I guess my parenting must be at fault. I'm sorry.
Well, he's growing. Kids need to eat a lot at this age, don't they? Feeling reassured, I shared some of my dishes with Nathan. After dinner and cleaning up with Mary, I played a bit more with Nathan. Before it was time for me to leave, months later, I received an unexpected call from Mary.
Susan, I'm sorry for the sudden call. It seems Michael has fallen ill while away. Could you look after Nathan for a bit?
I'm fine with it, but is Michael okay? Should I come instead? Despite offering to help, Mary insisted on not troubling me and left Nathan in my care. I can understand her concern for her husband's safety. I promised to look after Nathan while she took care of Michael. Mary emphasized contacting her if anything happened, as she might not be reachable while nursing Michael. Though puzzled, I respected her wishes, comforting Nathan and watching Mary leave for Michael.
Is Dad okay?
Don't worry, Dad will be okay. He's always been strong. Plus, Mom's with him. Comforting Nathan, I brought him back to my place, deciding to make this brief time a series of enjoyable memories, despite feeling a bit bad for Michael. Nathan, once we're at Grandma's, how about we play with some toys I used to play with? I've always taken good care of things, including toys from my and Michael's childhood, recently cleaned for Nathan to play with.
Really? I want to play. Yay!
Seeing Nathan brighten up at the mention of old toys relieved me after his previous worried expression. We arrived at my house and spent a leisurely time playing with nostalgic pieces and board games and watching cartoons that Nathan wanted to see. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, I asked Nathan what he wanted to eat. Normally, a child would name their favorite food like hamburgers or fried chicken. But Nathan seemed hesitant and puzzled rather than shy. What's wrong? You can tell me what you like. Grandma will make anything for you. Since he didn't answer, and I felt like pressing him further might seem like I was blaming him, I told him to just watch TV in the living room while he waited. I decided to prepare a meal that kids generally enjoy and called Nathan to the table when it was dinner time. However, Nathan didn't seem willing to sit down at the table. What's wrong? Don't you want to eat? Nathan shook his head vigorously in response to my question. Then why? Nathan looked at me with a puzzled expression and asked,
Grandma, is it okay for me to eat today?
I was so shocked by his question that I doubted my own hearing, wondering if I had misheard. But when I asked again, Nathan's response confirmed that I hadn't heard wrong. What do you mean? is it okay for you to eat today? You're supposed to eat 3 meals a day, right? Further questioning led to Nathan suddenly running out to the garden and starting to pull weeds. Surprised by Nathan's sudden strange behavior, I stopped him, I hugged him, and brought him back inside.
Why? Why do I have to stop?
You're hungry, right? That's why I prepared this meal for you. So why start pulling weeds?
Because Mom always says I shouldn't eat without helping out.
Hearing such unexpected words from Nathan again, I decided to ask for more details, which led to a shocking revelation. After Michael left for his solo business assignment, Mary apparently started to impose on Nathan the need to help around the house and be a good boy, withholding meals if he didn't comply. Nathan shared how he would look for any food left in the house when Mary was out, or wait until she returned if there wasn't any. Tears of sadness flowed uncontrollably as I remembered my visit to Mary's house. At that time, she mentioned Nathan eating a lot because he was growing. However, I realized he might not have eaten until that point. I wondered why I hadn't picked up on the signs and acknowledged Nathan's true feelings sooner. Filled with regret and self-reproach. At the same time, I felt a surge of anger towards Mary. Listen, Nathan. You might not understand now, but what your mom is doing is wrong. You're allowed to eat well regardless of whether you've helped out or been a good boy. You're going to grow up, okay? After reassuring Nathan, I got him to sit down and we enjoyed a hearty dinner together, followed by watching cartoons and sharing watermelon for dessert. After making sure Nathan had fallen asleep, I texted Michael to inform him of the situation, urging him to contact me once he was well. Though Mary had asked me not to contact her, I felt that promise could no longer be kept. Michael called back immediately after my message. I was relieved since I was worried Mary might have been controlling his phone due to his supposed illness.
Mom, what's all this about? Nathan not being fed while I'm away.
It's just as I messaged. Isn't Mary there with you?
What? There's no way Mary would be at my work assignment. I told you to look after them before I left.
A discrepancy emerged in the story Mary had told. Mary left saying she was going to take care of you because you were sick.
Sick? I haven't been sick at all. Besides, I would have contacted you if anything happened.
Indeed, that made sense. If anything were wrong, Michael would have reached out. But this time, without any prior notice from Mary about being sick, something felt off. The idea that she couldn't contact because she was nursing him. Insisting I not reach out to Michael unless I initiated it, seemed like an attempt to keep us apart, hiding something.
Actually, I just remembered Mary told me not to come home, even if I got a long holiday. Maybe, just maybe.
Finally, we both realized that Mary had been lying to us. Sharing with Michael everything Nathan said about Mary going out at night revealed many surprises for him. Michael's anger towards Mary was palpable over the phone. After hearing everything, Michael said he would take leave the next day to return to Nathan, ending our call for the night. The next morning, Michael arrived first, coming to my house. Seeing Nathan, he teared up slightly and hugged him tightly.
Welcome back, Dad. What's wrong?
Nathan, I'm sorry for being such a failure of a father.
It seemed Michael had made up his mind after yesterday's call, determined that divorce was the only option from someone who would treat Nathan this way while going out at night. From Nathan's account and the absence of Mary, it was likely she was having an affair, taking advantage of Michael being away on business. Michael conducted a search for evidence at home, checking Mary's room and places where items could be hidden. Although no physical evidence was found, a check of the PC history revealed hotel reservations made for two, suggesting nights spent away with someone else, enough to suspect an affair. Based on this evidence, Michael hired a detective agency to investigate further. A week later, unaware that Michael knew everything, Mary contacted me, saying she would return the next day, since Michael's health had improved. I immediately forwarded this to Michael, who took leave to wait for Mary at my house. Unaware, Mary walked right into what would become a battleground.
Nathan, I've come to pick you up.
The door opened to an angry Michael, and their eyes met. I locked the door to prevent Mary from fleeing and led her to a room to talk.
I've heard everything from Nathan. While I was away, you didn't even give him a proper meal.
Michael confronted her furiously, but Mary, avoiding eye contact, muttered it was discipline. Angered by her attitude, Michael presented further evidence from the detective's investigation and the hotel reservations, demanding a divorce and custody of Nathan.
You can't be trusted with Nathan. I can't stand the thought of something happening to him.
Wait, that's unfair. It wasn't like I enjoyed doing this.
So what? You were blackmailed into it. Spending time in hotels with someone you don't love, just like in a soap opera. Too convenient.
It's been hard for me too. You were away, and I was stressed, taking care of everything and Nathan all by myself.
Mary confessed that the stress of managing everything alone while Michael was away led her to take her frustrations out on Nathan and seek solace in an affair. Michael, driven to despair by her manipulative tone, threw down photos of a man on the floor. A man Nathan mentioned, but Michael only now learned about, revealing Mary had been sneaking out at night and had been seen happily chatting with a boyfriend when Michael couldn't make it home from work.
With all this evidence, can you still say the same? I'm telling you once more, we're getting a divorce, and I'm taking Nathan's custody. Got it?
Fine, do whatever you want. I'll marry someone who truly loves me.
Quiet. I told you, I won't say it again. How pathetic.
Mary, red with anger, struggled with the lock for a moment before storming out. Nathan looked like he wanted to stop her, but I held him back. I shook my head firmly when he looked at me questioningly.
Dad, did you and Mom fight?
Nathan, confused, looked at Michael.
Listen, Nathan, it might be hard to understand, but your mom and I didn't just fight. We're saying goodbye. But from now on, we'll live happily together, just you and me.
Michael tried to spare Nathan any further stress, smiling and gently patting his head. As I watched, I resolved to support them as much as I could. Later, additional investigation results showed Mary's affair partner was married, leading to a significant settlement demanded by his wife. Mary, abandoned by her lover, who chose to reconcile with his wife, attempted to reconcile with Michael, but was met with a restraining order. Michael, realizing he couldn't leave Nathan alone, switched to a remote job and decided we would all live together at my house. Nathan, initially puzzled, adjusted over time and now knows the house better than Michael, often helping him find things like nail clippers. I ensure Nathan never goes hungry again, preparing warm, homemade meals for us to enjoy together, ensuring a happy and nourishing environment for Nathan. We're committed to making sure Nathan's future memories are filled with warmth and love from his family. Today, as I prepare another delicious meal, seeing Nathan and Michael happily eat fills me with joy, knowing they are content and well fed. "Where are you now? The ceremony is starting," I shouted into the phone, finally reaching my husband, Keith.
On a family trip to Italy?
On our daughter's wedding day. To this, Keith just laughed and hung up the phone. Family, indeed. I repeated that thought in my mind, as if realizing them anew. I stared at the disconnected phone for a while, but soon shifted my focus and reached out to someone else. About the matter I had requested before, I need it done as soon as possible, starting now. I spoke with determination. "Yes, I leave everything in your hands. Please start immediately." "Understood," came a very spirited response from the other end. By the way, this contact was with a civil engineering company that has been close to my family home since long ago. And inwardly, I thought to myself, while suppressing my laughter, "Go ahead and enjoy just this moment. Your so-called family trip. Because this might be your last pleasure. My name is Diana Woods, 52 years old. I'm a housewife with 2 children. My husband, Keith, is 55 years old. Our marriage, about 30 years ago, was a sort of arranged marriage intended to bring our companies closer together. But that marriage life is likely to end soon. It's due to Keith's recurring issues himself. There were initially no signs of separation during the early times of our marriage. At least, I thought we could build a warm home together, despite the marriage being largely for business reasons. Keith thought so too, at that time. That changed after our 2 children were born. Shortly after getting married, I got pregnant and gave birth to our first child, John. The following year, our daughter, Lucy, was born. The children were a joy, but parenting was harder than I imagined. At that time, Keith, just around 30, was still in his training period at his father's company. Perhaps that was the reason, or maybe it was just too much stress. Even when he came home, he didn't participate in parenting. Despite seeing me overwhelmed with the cries of our 2 children, he did nothing. Rather, something seemed to have cooled off, and he began using work as an excuse to stay away from home more and more. Well, honestly, I had my regrets too. At the time, I was overwhelmed with childcare and insisted on handling it without anyone's help. The one who helped me was my mother back at my family home. My parents are gone now, but when I think back on those times, I truly appreciate their presence. Without the housekeeper my mother arranged for me, I would have completely succumbed to parenting stress. But once that period was over, the children were truly adorable. With Keith sinking into his work and barely coming home, parenting became my life's purpose. However, I grew suspicious of Keith's prolonged absences, and once asked him, "Where are you always going?" Back then, Keith would dodge the question with vague responses, but when he failed to attend our daughter's and son's birthday parties, I finally confronted him.
You do your thing, and I'll handle what needs to be done here.
I couldn't imagine what he felt needed to be done. What's so important that you'd skip our son and daughter's events? I snapped, questioning him heatedly. In response, Keith would say this.
You know I have a sister who's much younger than me, right?
You mentioned she's 13 years younger. Was it Emily?
Yes, it's Emily. She has her coming of age party soon, so I need to discuss a few things about that with our parents.
His tone suggested he prioritized his sister over our children, making me retort sharply, "What did you just say?" But Keith responded as if it were the most natural thing.
You've been so busy with the kids, ignoring me, so you probably didn't know, but they're going through a tough time too.
I was at a loss for words. But this kind of incident kept happening. Keith started making excuses because of his sister, even for attending open houses at the kindergarten and elementary school. He wouldn't come to birthday parties of the kids, but would go to adult celebrations. He skipped the open houses, but attended Emily's graduation ceremony. What exactly is home to Keith, and who does he consider his family? I often wondered. And so, I ended up hosting our children's birthday parties alone and attending their open houses and graduation ceremonies by myself. In our children's milestone photos, the father's figure was absent. Eventually, the children also realized that their father did not participate in their events. As they faced exams, college admissions, and job searches, they moved forward on their own volition. Both would first explore what they wanted to do on their own, find suitable schools, and consider if they could get admitted before consulting their parents. To me, they would merely ask, "I want to go here. What do you think?"
Because I don't want to burden you, Mom.
I heard these words as early as middle school. It's not bad that they know what they want to do. It also shows they have a strong sense of independence. But as a parent, especially seeing their father, and realizing he couldn't be relied upon, I couldn't help feeling sad. I hardly set a good example myself. Since getting married, I had been a full-time housewife. Well, occasionally, I was called upon due to my family's company business. It seemed to have been considering leaving me some assets early on, and my brother agreed with this too. My parents were both deceased about 10 years ago. They passed on when they were in their 70s. The company has been entrusted to my brother, Kevin, and I'm currently receiving a decent portion from the inheritance apart from that. As for Keith's sister, Emily, spoiled by Keith and her parents, she landed a job at a subsidiary through her father's connections after her coming-of-age party and university graduation ceremonies. But it seemed she was never really into working. After working for 2 years, she quit her job as easily as if she were about to start her bridal training. Apparently, she never liked working in the first place and ended up living a leisurely life at her parents' home. And again, neither her parents nor her brother Keith had anything to say about it. It seemed like they were actually pleased that she couldn't handle it and were happy that she didn't work. Later, she actively pursued arranged marriages, but they always ended up broken off for some reason. Apparently, most of these breakups were due to Keith's opposition. And whenever Keith opposed, Emily would simply take his word for it, saying, "If Big Brother says so." Before you know it, she's in her 40s. I heard she's just staying there without getting married at all. By the way, her parents are now in their 80s. Unlike my parents, who passed away early, my in-laws are still robust and active, but you'd think they would still have some concerns. Yet, Emily doesn't do anything and continues to live her carefree life. Because he's still healthy, my father-in-law remains the company president, and Keith shows no signs of taking over. Keith probably wants to take the reins soon, but it seems his father is not ready to step down. I don't know the reasons for that. I had lost all fondness for Keith a long time ago. My brother and his wife also said it would be best to get divorced at some point, and with the kids now independent, I'm considering starting a second life of my own. Fortunately, my parents left me a considerable estate early on. With that, I can start something new or take a break if I choose. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I was also gathering evidence that would be advantageous for me in the divorce. My brother's lawyer has been advising me on this matter. However, an event that put these plans on hold occurred. That's because Lucy is getting married. The groom is 8 years older than her, a colleague at her brother's company, where Lucy met him as a senior employee. He's quite capable and was said to be likely transferred to an overseas branch soon. By the way, Lucy, having seen Emily as a bad example, made sure never to disclose her family connections at work.
Boasting about such things is foolish, just like in school. If you flaunt being rich, you're bound to be disliked.
That was Lucy's reasoning. I did try to inform Keith about the wedding. But as expected, he kept saying he was too busy, and every time I brought it up, he would quickly make an excuse to leave. I just responded with "Oh, is that so?" Nevertheless, I informed him of the date and venue via invitations and messages. But I didn't bother confirming the schedule directly with Keith. And on the day of the wedding, we all headed to the venue. There was no sign of Keith showing up even in the morning of the wedding day. I tried contacting him. "Where are you? The ceremony is starting."
On a family trip in Italy.
I can't help but blink at those words. "On your daughter's wedding day?" To this, Keith just laughed and hung up the phone. I sighed and looked up at the ceiling for a few seconds. "Family, huh, family?" I repeated it several times in my mind. It's probably a trip to Italy with his parents and Emily. I knew it, but to come to this point, I'm genuinely appalled. For Keith, family ultimately means his parents and siblings, not us. Of course, I've known this for a long time. I didn't expect much from an arranged marriage. He probably felt the same. The difference between Keith and me is, I initially wanted to make a real home, and Keith did not. I continued this charade for over 20 years, all for the sake of the children. The kids themselves might have thought they didn't even need a father. Still, I wanted to maintain a certain social standing until both became adults. That might have just been my own selfishness. The kids probably thought it would have been much easier without such pretenses. Well, fine. I took a deep breath and made a call again. Hello, it's me, yes, Diana Woods. Regarding the matter I've asked you about before, I'd like it done as soon as possible, starting now. I spoke assertively to the somewhat distant voice on the other end. Yes, I leave everything in your hands, so please start immediately. Understood, came a very spirited reply. The person on the other end was from a civil engineering company that has had a long-standing relationship with my family. And inwardly, I thought to myself, while suppressing my laughter, go ahead, enjoy yourself for now. Your so-called family trip. Because this might be your last enjoyment. Then, a month later, I received a call. I answered it on my tablet. Then there appeared the image of a lawyer with a beaming smile.
Ms. Woods, or rather, should I say Miss Fields now?
The lawyer used my maiden name. Does that mean the papers have been processed? My voice bounced with inadvertent excitement.
Yes, I've made sure everything is in order.
This lawyer, who appeared on my screen, was affiliated with my family's company. I continued, asking him, could you tell me what has happened in these past 2 weeks?
I thought you might ask, so I've prepared everything.
Facing the lawyer on the screen, I couldn't help but smile and laugh. Currently, there's a distance as long as 1/5 of the Earth's circumference between me and the lawyer. I've bought a house in Germany. That's because my daughter's husband, upon their marriage, was assigned to transfer to an overseas branch, as previously mentioned.
He was worried about my language skills.
That's what Lucy said.
But, you won't know until you go. And once you're there, you'll manage somehow. So it's okay. I've always managed to make it work like that.
Lucy and her husband are now at the German branch. And I live in a separate building on their new property. Partly for security reasons. The lawyer, whom I was watching, seemed to have adjusted some equipment on his side.
First, this.
He showed me what had happened during Keith and his family's trip to Italy.
Wait a minute. Why can't we get into this hotel today?
That's my father-in-law shouting. He was wearing a gorgeous shirt under the bright blue sky.
I'm sorry. Today, the venue is reserved for a wedding and the reception.
What? The top hotel in Florence?
Yes, that day, there was a wedding at that location. It was Lucy and her husband's. By the way, Keith and his group had flown from the United States to Italy, but by that time, we had already headed towards Florence. We planned to relax at the resort before the ceremony. They didn't even know about it. I had informed them on the day, just in case. It's ridiculous that they didn't even know we were in Italy. It really shows how little they cared about us.
That's strange.
The lawyer found it baffling.
You did tell them the destination, right, Diana?
I did, through postcards and messages. They usually don't catch me, so it was a surprise that my call went through on the wedding day, probably just to show off their family trip. That's ridiculous, the lawyer laughed. The ceremony will be held abroad. I left clear instructions that it will be at this hotel in Italy. And what's going on with them saying they can't stay when they come right up to the hotel?
At the very least, they could have mentioned they were there to attend the wedding.
In the video, the disgruntled family was shown. Emily, looking confused and unable to understand what was being said, was also visible. The explanation was in English, but the whispers around were in Italian. She majored in Italian at university, so she might have been able to hold a conversation decently, but there's a gap of about 20 years. It seems she's completely lost touch with Italian conversation by now. The whispers of the surrounding staff indicated that these were the people who were supposed to attend the wedding today. Indeed, we had instructed the employees accordingly. If these people came to attend the wedding, let them in. If they came just for dining or staying, then not that day, since we reserved the place for the wedding. The wedding was grand, and my daughter, her husband, and I departed from an international airport in Italy to Germany on the same day. We had no plans to return to the US. Meanwhile, fuming with anger, they apparently intended to return to the US from the same international airport. But they were stopped there because Keith's card had been declined. This moment too was captured on video by the staff following them.
What? My credit can't be used? This one too?
Yes, sir. The name on the card isn't yours, is it?
Indeed, that was the case. Keith had taken my credit and bank cards, so I had them stopped. The bank account in question was my personal asset. Keith had dipped into it, but I pretended not to notice. Doing such things was bound to come out eventually. I had another account set aside that I could freely use, so even if one was depleted, it wouldn't affect my lifestyle. I overlooked it to gather evidence.
Damn. Why doesn't it work anymore?
It's probably because the owner stopped it, right?
What do you mean? We can't get home if you say that. I don't have that much cash on me.
The staff, sighing at Keith's outburst, simply said,
"These cards cannot be used, so you cannot board the flight back to the US."
With that, they were driven out of the airport. Left with no choice, they had to return to Florence and reportedly borrowed money from the consulate to get back home. It took them a significant amount of time to get to that point. It seems they did not come up with the idea of relying on the consulate very easily. Moreover, they tried borrowing money from acquaintances first because they were embarrassed, which took even more time. Ultimately, when they realized that was not possible, they finally begged the embassy for help. Their visa had already expired, and they had no room to care about appearances anymore. They were thoroughly squeezed at the consulate. After all, the cause was a stopped card. They were held a bit due to perceived issues with their actions. Then they barely made it back to the US and repaid the travel expenses to the consulate from his own account. But when they came home to complain to me, there was nothing left. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at the sight of them then.
What the hell is this?
Keith screamed in front of where our home used to be. And my in-laws dropped their luggage. Our house was built nearly 30 years ago by my parents as a new home when we got married. I had always maintained it well, so it could have been sold if I wanted. But it was my property, and since I planned to live in Germany, I didn't want to leave anything behind. So I only stored Keith's clearly personal items in a storage unit, and had everything else disposed of by a service. That was the other call I made on the day of the wedding.
What on earth is going on?
Keith was scratching his head, stomping his feet, and finally, he kneeled and started pounding on his suitcase. I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I saw that. Then Lucy came over when she heard me laughing.
What's going on, Mom?
Lucy, just look at your father. He's in quite a state.
He's not my father anymore.
While saying this, Lucy looked at the screen I was pointing at. In the screen, there was a for sale sign in front of the now empty lot.
This used to be our house. It's completely empty now.
Lucy said that with a wry smile. She had always found it creepy how her father doted on his sister more than her, especially during her adolescence. I knew she had always said she wanted to cut ties with him as soon as possible.
I'm glad to hear that makes you happy, Lucy.
The lawyer chimed in. No, really, thank you for the entertaining footage, but that's not all, is it? I asked him.
Oh no, there's more.
The lawyer said with a mischievous grin. Next up is this. Again, a frustrated Keith appeared, glaring at something.
What is this all about?
The sound of him slamming the desk was audible.
It's nothing unusual. Your wife, Diana, asked me to fill out these divorce papers.
Diana would never say such a thing.
How can you be so sure?
Keith started to say something, then seemed to have realization.
Right, the card. Why did she have to stop it?
As Keith muttered, the lawyer responded in a matter-of-fact tone.
Well, of course. Anyone would do the same if they found out someone was using a large amount of money from their account without permission. Why were you using Diana's card in the first place? Didn't you have your own card?
Keith just grunted and fell silent.
Or were you perhaps lacking that much financial leeway?
We had investigated that area too. To be honest, there isn't much money in Keith or his parents' accounts currently. Just a tiny bit for business operations, while the rest had been siphoned from my savings. He took the card from me with his own interpretation that it was family money, without any permission. So when I said stop, that was all there was to it.
Furthermore, after stopping it, we discovered a significant amount of money had been spent.
Embezzlement. No. This was supposed to be marital assets, right?
Not at all. What are you talking about? Didn't you know?
The lawyer asked incredulously.
The funds you were using belonged to Diana herself, from before your marriage.
Before our marriage? No, that can't be. Diana never said that.
She probably didn't feel the need to say anything. It would have been fine as long as nothing happened. But something did happen, didn't it?
What?
Keith stood up abruptly.
Diana said there was no point in being a family with you guys anymore. At least, your children no longer consider you their father.
What did you say?
That's to be expected. Do you even know where your children went to college, what they studied, and who they married? And above all, do you know where your daughter's wedding took place?
Keith was at a loss for words. By the way, the lawyer then provided the date and location of Lucy's wedding. Keith's expression changed dramatically. He muttered to himself, "No way."
Yes, it was at the hotel you tried to stay at that day.
That place. Keith leaned forward.
That's right. Didn't you hear that there was a wedding going on that day?
Sure, maybe. But why wouldn't they let us in then?
That's simple.
The lawyer explained the instructions I had given to the hotel.
Diana had told them in advance. Why don't you check your phone? Haven't you checked at all, or did you have another phone?
Faced with these rapid-fire questions, Keith remained silent. Well, if you think about it, it makes sense he wouldn't connect. Keith probably had multiple phones originally, and the one that connected to me was usually turned off. I had anticipated this because my messages were unread too often. When I asked if he had changed phones, he would at least give me the number. I deliberately didn't ask that. It was part of my plan. Evidence of my messages was left intact. I left numerous voicemails. I made sure to sound increasingly agitated, asking, "Are you listening? Are you there? I want you to see this." Of course, the messages were the same. I had tried other methods too. Yet Keith had shut out everything that connected to me. The lawyer then continued.
So, Diana will also be seeking compensation for the misuse of funds, and she's filing for damages for your neglect of the family. And I've been informed by her family that they will also cut off any financial support to your company.
What? Let me see Diana. Please let me see her.
Keith begged, nearly in tears.
No, that would be pointless.
Why? Where is Diana now?
She's definitely not in the US anymore.
At that moment, Keith's face was a sight too pitiful to behold.
After the wedding, Diana and everyone immediately went to the United States.
What?
And you were detained, while she left with ease.
Hearing this, Keith clenched his fists, trembling. Lucy, watching beside him, couldn't suppress a snicker. "So, what do you think?" the lawyer asked us. "Very entertaining footage. Is there more?"
Yes, there is. This is from a recent event after Diana's divorce was finalized, which also led to the dissolution of the business partnership. Kevin and I had personally visited the company to record this.
The lawyer then showed me another video.
The support is cut off. What does that mean? Our company can't survive without your support.
This time it was my in-laws who raised their voices. Both of them, with sunburned faces, asked the question.
Yes. What's with the sunburn? Did you go on a trip somewhere?
On the screen, Kevin was asking my father-in-law.
So the wedding.
Lucy's.
Yes, yes. Lucy's wedding. It was in Italy.
Kevin then grinned slyly.
Actually, I was there that day.
The two of them gasped.
Of course, it was my lovely niece's wedding. My wife and I both attended the ceremony in Italy that day. Oh, and by the way, I'm fully aware of what you were doing that day.
Sweat dripped profusely from my in-laws' faces.
And yet, you didn't immediately remember Lucy's name. How little interest did you have in those kids?
Kevin pressed them at this point.
So think, you can even remember the name of one of your two grandchildren. What does that say about you?
Well, no, those kids never really took to us.
Whether they took to you or not, have you ever done anything for them?
Both were at a loss for words. But then, suddenly, someone burst into the room.
Wow, heavyweight. Amazing. How old is this person?
Lucy gasped and blurted that out. The person who suddenly appeared on screen was Emily. She's 42 years old.
My husband is 10 years older than her. Oh no, she was the kittle tant.
Indeed, in today's terms. Now that you mention it, she's been a kidult living at home for 20 years. I wonder what she'll do next. I wondered aloud as I looked back at the screen.
If the support is cut off, what will we do? What should I do?
There, not the lawyer, but Emily was confronting her parents. Well, what's going to happen now, I wonder? My father-in-law was lost for words as he muttered that.
Well, the divorce is finalized, and as such, we no longer have any reason to provide you with financial aid.
What? Why did you let the divorce go through?
Don't you understand by now? There were many reasons, but the decisive factor was you misusing funds.
But those were marital assets.
Kevin sighed deeply.
Keith also claimed that, didn't he? Well, of course, we were concerned about that, which is why we had already gifted Diana her premarital assets as a living inheritance.
Does that mean you didn't trust us?
Realistically, how can there be any trust for someone who has misused his wife's assets? Moreover, just how long? How long have you left your own family members, including Diana and Lucy, unattended?
My in-laws were speechless.
Even I, their uncle, attended their birthday parties. Of course, Diana came to our house too. Well, the fact that we stopped talking about such things a long time ago probably means you weren't thought of as family anymore.
It seemed like Kevin was enjoying blaming my in-laws at every opportunity.
Yes, just as you imagined those three as a separate family. Oh, yes, I recall on the day of the wedding, Keith told Diana he was going to Italy with his family.
Startled, my father-in-law looked up, and my mother-in-law covered her face, exclaiming, "What have you done?"
Family? Who? Which family are we talking about?
Kevin said that with a broad smile directed at my parents-in-law and Emily.
That settled it completely, didn't it? How was that?
Thank you. I'm very satisfied. Please proceed with the next steps.
There aren't really any more steps to take.
Lucy and I exchanged glances and laughed at the lawyer's words. The lawyer would keep us informed about the developments. Occasionally, Kevin would also contact us. Firstly, my former in-law's company, unable to secure any loans, faced bankruptcy and was eventually merged into my brother's company. We absolutely must save the employees. It seems the initial reason for supporting the company was because of the quality of what the employees produced, not because the management of my former in-law's company was good. I wasn't fully aware of these details, but Kevin explained them to me again. My former father-in-law was ousted from his position as president. They had to sell their property and moved into a rental. They are now struggling with what to do next. The ordeal had aged them considerably, and health issues began to surface, once maintained by sheer willpower. Keith is now regretting not having booked a spot in a retirement home in advance. It seems financially challenging for them to enter one now. Keith managed to secure re-employment at an acquaintance's company. Given their history, the acquaintance reluctantly hired Keith. But after the divorce incident, the acquaintance realized he was unreliable. Initially offered a full-time position, he was demoted to a contract employee. It was a clear message that he could be easily dismissed if he stepped out of line. Though lenient, I hoped he would continue working to help pay off his debts. As for Emily, well, that's a difficult situation. She now lives in a rental with her parents. But having been a kidult for 20 years, she is truly incapable of much. Her savings are depleted, so her desperate parents are pushing her to find work through the employment service. However, her job expectations are too high, making it difficult to find employment. Well, that's only natural. They even considered marriage as an option, but of course, that's a high hurdle too. What exactly had she been doing for 20 years, I wonder in disbelief. Yet, our life on German is wonderfully bright and clear. Living abroad has its risks, of course. John, still in the US, often calls to check on us, but I reassure him each time that all is well. Come visit sometime soon, and if you can, bring a nice wife with you. John blushed and remained silent as I said that. As long as we choose to live in a safe area, life remains calm. Slowly learning unfamiliar German, getting along with other American families, and thinking about what to do next under the bright sun and dry wind make every day enjoyable. There is a timing for divorce. I won't say my 30 years of married life were all bad. But it's because I let go now that I can have a future. From here on out, I want to live a fun and energetic life with my daughter and her husband.